All right, I got Logan Christopher on the show today. He is the founder of Legendary Strength and the co-founder and CEO of Lost Empire Herbs. They are a company, a health enhancement company and hormonal support company that taps into the powers of herbalism and natural wisdom to inspire healthy living. Logan, welcome to the show, brother.
Thanks for having me on, Joel. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, man. Great to have you. I was telling you offline, been following you and your company for about probably a decade now. And the reason was I had a good friend who was a holistic health nut like me, who was really into natural holistic solutions. And he came across your herb company. I'm calling it an herb company, an herbalist that makes high quality herbs, I should say. And that we were always very big into testing. Even a decade ago, I understood testing and finding quality companies and companies that got results. And so I think at the time, him and I were talking about maca and pine pollen. And then he tells me, you got to check out this. At the time, you guys were called Superhuman Herbs, and now it's Lost Empire. And he's like, you got to try this stuff. Black ant powder, ashwagandha, sistanche, all these things I never heard of. And so it was really, really cool. And it gave me a chance to also learn about the power of herbs and using them differently than, again, something that we see at GNC like Explode, which has just a bunch of fillers and crap in it and things that are detrimental to our health. If anything, they're not beneficial. Anyways, that's how I know you. And now here we all coming full circle. I get a chance to actually talk to you and geek out about all the things that you're up to. And for people that don't know, though, talk about just, your background. And you have such an eclectic background. Like, when you look at your bio, it's like the Guinness Book of World Records for strength. You tear phone booths. Books.
Tearing a phone booth would be impressive.
Impressive, yeah. You have like these world records where you've tied your ponytail and pulled a fire truck. I mean, just insane feats of strength. But talk about just kind of your background for people that don't know you the same way I do, and also what led you to this path of saying like, hey, we got to create a company dedicated to herbs because they're that important.
Yeah, as you said, I'm quite an eccentric person, not doing the average stuff out there. So it started really for me. I started getting into fitness when I was about 18 as I was reaching adulthood. And I'm not naturally strong or athletic. Like I was the proverbial 98-pound weakling out there. But as I got into this, just for whatever reason, I started with body weight exercises, went on to kettlebells, then went on to like the old time strongman stuff. And I read this book about a guy named the Mighty Atom, who was a performing strongman back in the vaudeville era. He did some amazing stunts, and based off that, I don't know what it was about me, but I read that book as like, I want to do this. So I continued down further in that path. And in so doing, because I'm not like genetically gifted at being strong, I wasn't natural at this stuff, I was always on the lookout for an edge. So as I'm learning fitness, people are talking about health. It's like, oh, I gotta learn health. Oh, I need to move away from the standard American diet of Hot Pockets and Twinkies, and I should start eating healthy. I should lose my childish ways of not eating fruits and vegetables. So I started to really dive into nutrition and that sort of thing. And from nutrition, that led me to herbs. I think it was around, I don't know exactly what year, but I started hearing about people talk about cordyceps fungus, which is something that Olympic athletes were using, and they started breaking records. So it's like, well, I'm working out. I got to try this out. And in that first workout, I noticed more energy and I could perform a little bit better. So I was hooked from the beginning. And from there, it was just a matter of going deeper into the herbs and realizing that there is a whole host of things out there. Around the same time, I lost my mother to breast cancer. She did conventional treatment, and obviously, it's a torturous thing to go through. Although she went in remission at first, it came back later and claimed her life. So this was also a spark for me to look at, what are alternative healing methods, since the standard medical system failed her, and that kind of also pushed me in that direction as well. And then it was just one thing after another. Like, I was starting real weak and became this strongman doing these feats that most people cannot do. And it's like, oh, how did I get here, right? And I started just using herbs for myself. And then later on down the line, along with my two brothers, decided to start this company and share these herbs with a wider audience.
Yeah, before we talk about the herbs, I mean, and you mentioned not being genetically gifted and not really, being known for your strength, but at the same time, you've got to train your body to pull a frickin' 8,000 pound frickin' fire truck by your hair, right? So how do you train for some of these ridiculous, not ridiculous, like crazy, like I mean crazy feats of strength? Like how do you train for these unconventional things
Mhm.
than the average person would train, like 5 sets of 5 or 3 by 3s, right? Like how do you train for these things?
Yeah. Well, if you understand the principles of progressive strength training, then it's not that much different between training a bench press and training to pull a fire truck by your hair. Obviously, the latter is a little bit different, and I don't necessarily recommend it. A big part of strongman is pain tolerance can be involved in that. It's not a comfortable feat of strength to do, but in training for that, I started with a small vehicle, like just a pickup truck, and started pulling that. When that was easy, okay, can we add a little bit of an incline, or can I find a bigger vehicle? And along with that, there's of course the mindset that goes into it. This is another area that I went in very deeply, studying hypnosis, neuro-linguistic programming. How can I apply my mind? Because as we all know, it's mind over matter in many ways, but can we find specific processes that really help with this? So I was talking to a guy that put on this strongman event where these feats were taking place, and he said, "Hey, I have this 8,800-pound fire truck. Do you think you can pull that by your hair?" After I said I could pull vehicles, I'm sure. I've never pulled anything this big. I didn't know if I actually could do it, but I started training really for that. And sure enough, when I get out the event, and it was extremely tough. Not only was this the biggest vehicle I'd ever pulled by my hair, just the biggest vehicle, period. So it was a matter of that progressive training and then belief in myself that I could pull this off.
Yeah, very cool. What's the craziest? I mean, that's pretty crazy, but is there any one that stands out more for you, or was a more difficult feat to train for and accomplish? What was the craziest one?
Uh, well, I'll just give an example. Something that I'm training for right now is, well, a long time now I've been able to tear a deck of cards in half with my hands, something like that. Just take it and rip it. So want to go progressive and make it harder. So right now I'm working towards tearing 2 decks of cards at once. So 104 cards. My best right now, I believe, was 91 cards. So I'm just inching my way up there. Again, it's the progressive training. Can we add just 1 card at a time until we get to that goal? And yeah, this one's it's tough.
Hey, on that note, because we, like you said, mind over matter. We make things so complicated, and I always say inch by cinch. I'm inch by inch, it's a cinch. Yard by yard, it's hard. When you're training, and you just mentioned progressive overload, are you doing that like literally? Is it just like, all right, I started with 50 cards, I was able to do it. Now I'm adding 51. Next day, 52. Next day, 53. Until you plateau and you're like, okay, now I got to kind of like work up to it. Is it quote unquote that simple? Like just that progressive, like, kind of getting you there?
Yeah, more or less. I mean, that sort of linear progression, if you're just doing that, you are going to hit a plateau. So, you can do other things like I'm working at speed of how fast can I tear this, because sometimes you're struggling with it. Sometimes it's much easier. You can, of course, do multiple sets. You need lots of decks of cards in doing this. There are, of course, assistance exercises as well. But yeah, so all that stuff that is also incorporated into other sorts of training gets applied here. And of course, there is technique involved in this, but then, I mean, there's technique in doing a push-up, in doing a squat. All exercises have technique. So you learn that foundation, you learn that technique, and you're practicing it, but then it's about building the strength, the nervous wiring in order to be able to pull it off.
Dude, 100%. I love that, though, just hearing from you, just that simple example, because again, everything is, we look at a guy like you and it's like, oh my God, like, how did you train for that? How did you get that? It's like, dude, I just did 1 card at a time. I mean, it's a little bit more complicated than that, but just that idea of just baby steps. And most of us will fail way earlier in the process because we just get crapped out, or we get bored, or we just lose interest and we're like, I can never do that. And it's all mind over matter again. So I love just hearing these feats of strength. Is really a great lesson, I think, for all of us. So really cool.
Yeah, it's really fun stuff too. I mean, when my training involves juggling kettlebells or ripping decks of cards in half, like I have fun doing this. I've often said if I had to go to a gym and run on a treadmill for an hour, I wouldn't want to work out either. Like that's just not something that excites me. There's such a wide variety of things you can do for fitness. So that's one of the most important things is, find something that you actually enjoy doing. Yeah, you're going to have to put in some work with it, of course, but if you can get to the point of like, oh, I get to where I want to do this rather than this is something I need to do, you're in just such an easier place as far as the lifelong motivation to do such things.
Yeah. Yeah. Dude, let's jump into herbs because I love herbs, but I'll be honest with you. And I have this problem, and I was explaining to one of my other friends who's an acupuncturist and has an amazing herb company, Radical Roots, and I was explaining to her, I said, you know, the biggest problem I see with practitioners, including myself, is I understand the value of herbs. I know they work. Ashwagandha, great for stress, great for male hormones. I get it, and the data shows that. But I'm always thinking of like, how can I prescribe for my client or for myself? How can I use herbs? And sometimes for me, it gets a little fuzzy, right? And so that's what I always tell her. Like, that's just difficult. I don't know how to program it in my regular routine. Whereas, like, let's say, for example, all of us more or less know, take a multivitamin for this, right? Take vitamin C, take vitamin D for hormone health in the sun, right? All that kind of stuff. So we understand that, but herbs is a little bit more difficult. And so how do you help people break down through that? I know on your website, you have a great like quiz that people can use to kind of help funnel them in. What are you going to need most probably for your health based on the questionnaire? But anything else, or how would you kind of explain to people how they can learn about herbs in the same way I am, get over that fear of like, it's not as complicated as you think, Joel?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is a tricky subject. Just our culture as a whole, like, doesn't know how to think about herbs. And it's like, oh, this is something that humanity used to do. And it doesn't work even despite all the scientific evidence and everything that is available there. So one of the terms that I came up with is this idea of performance herbalism, right? Obviously with all the strongman stuff. And this is why I got into herbs in the first place. So most people think of herbs in a couple different categories. Like there's, of course, the culinary herbs. These are used to make food taste better. And they have lots of nutrients and benefits that come along with them as well. However, a lot of the herbs that, you know, my company is selling, most of them don't taste good at all. They can be extremely bitter, sour, like all kinds of tastes that to the untrained palate aren't necessarily good, right?
I agree, but I started to enjoy it. The bitterness was something that we've lost in our taste buds. We've really lost that. And I appreciated the more I would have, like even the black ant powder I thought was fantastic, actually. This Cassandra berry was tart, but like, man, you could really taste it. And it has like, Cassandra, from my understanding, is like one of the highest things you can find in vitamin C. So, you know, it actually, I think it's a good thing. But yeah, if you're not used to it, it could be difficult in the beginning.
Yeah. Yeah, one thing to recognize is that our taste buds are actually malleable, and a lot of it has to do with mindset. Just if you think like, I hate that thing, like you're never going to get over that hurdle, but you can remove those mental blocks, and also that your taste buds will actually adapt to things. And yeah, if we get rid of the bitter flavor because we don't like bitter, anything that is bitter within the natural world, all those compounds, we're just saying like, no, not getting any of those in our body. Of course, you can get them through like capsules and whatnot, but to actually have the taste, that does clue your body into what to do with the things, and is kind of important in that way. But yeah, culinary herbs was one area that people think about. Then herbs to treat something. Of course, you can't treat things. Only doctors can do that. Medical disclaimer here. But if you went to an herbalist and I have this problem, there are herbs that are going to be able to help with that. In Chinese medicine and Taoist philosophy, they would break herbs into three different categories. There were the inferior herbs. These were ones that were like sometimes toxic, but could be used to treat things. You'd want to be on them a short amount of time. There was the general or middle herbs. These would also be used to treat things to help with different conditions. But then there was the class of superior herbs. These are herbs that are just going to support your health overall. There's this idea of radiant health or health beyond danger. So really getting your health to a point where you're not facing many of the like chronic illnesses, the things that people are, and just have like vibrant energy, you have good mood, that sort of thing. So this class of superior herbs, this is what can just support your health overall. And you don't need to think like, oh, I'm taking this herb specifically because I have this issue. So this is the way that I kind of got into herbs in the first place. And by taking these herbs, you don't need to overly stress about what it's going to do. You still need to find the herbs that work for you. We all have like different constitutions, and one herb may be the best in the world for someone, but not necessarily work for the next person. You mentioned ashwagandha earlier. Overall, this one is like well tolerated by most people and really helps with that stress. And as you said, there can help support hormones through that mechanism for the most part, as well as a host of other things. But some people may not respond well to ashwagandha, and they could use something else, a different adaptogen such as rhodiola can be very useful, having some of the same function, but some of the different stuff as well. But, rhodiola may be too stimulating for other people. The kind of philosophy behind what we do, since it's the best way to learn herbs would be, one-on-one with an herbalist and really taking the herbs and learning them that way. But, we're doing it online. So we try to have, great information. We have stuff like that quiz that will point people in the right direction based on what they're looking for. And we always say, try the herbs, see what works for you. And if it does, great, keep using it. If it doesn't, try something else. And over time, this way you can find those, this term of an herbal ally, those ones that really it's your best friend of the herbal world. Like you and this herb, you just want to go far because it does so much for you.
Yeah. I'm, as I'm listening to you, kind of blew my mind. It's obvious now from talking to you, herbs they're adaptogens, just like we look at medicinal mushrooms and we look at other herbs, ashwagandha, rhodiola. These are all eleuthero, these are all adaptogens. They will adapt and balance your body out with whatever you need. If you need a little bit more oomph, it's going to give you that. And if you need to balance the stress levels, which most of us are, that's what it is, then it's going to do that too. So that's why you're, like you said, you can take them daily because they're just adapting to your body and helping you become more adaptable. So to the stressors that you're taking on. So that's really cool.
Yeah, the adaptogen, that term came out of Russian research, I want to say around 40s, 50s, or 60s. And specifically, there's 3 functions in it. That an herb would be non-toxic. So again, this is more that superior class. It would be normalizing. This means that if something was low, it could bring it up. If something was high, it could bring it down. And then also non-specific. So it wasn't working on just like one specific biomechanical pathway or one area of the body, but could really have broad effects across the whole system. So the word has been kind of extended. People overuse it when it really should apply to fewer herbs. But overall, this is really a helpful way of looking at things. And yeah, it's just herbs that can go in and help your body better able to adapt to physical and mental stressors. And of course, as you said, we have far too many of those in this life. So having some support in this way can be extremely helpful.
Yeah. And I'm 42 years old. I'm a guy. I've come to the point that the conclusion that I think probably every male, my guess, should probably be taking ashwagandha. I mean, we see testosterone levels just plummeting. And I mean, just the stress levels, I think we're all under a high amount of stress. It's just probably a good thing to be taking prophylactically. I don't see why not. I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, it can be really useful. So ashwagandha is specifically one of the things it's best at is lowering cortisol levels. And cortisol is the stress hormone. And specifically cortisol and testosterone, they work on an inverse relationship. So if cortisol is too high, that's going to lower testosterone. If cortisol gets lower, testosterone can go up. So specifically, if you are having low testosterone due to stress levels, this is going to be one of the best ones. Ashwagandha is a bit unique among the adaptogens because it's actually relaxing, can help people fall asleep as well. Of course, sleep's going to be important for all the hormone health, as opposed to some of the others like rhodiola, as I mentioned, was stimulating 𝘱𝑒𝑒𝑛𝑑𝑟𝑎, stimulating 𝘬𝘓𝑒𝑟𝑜, stimulating to some degree. So ashwagandha can be really helpful in that way. And yeah, overall, from what I have seen, most people respond well to ashwagandha, really great for men. And actually, I'd say women tend to use it even more as well. And of course, it's going to help with their hormones as well because similar things are going on.
Yeah. Talk about, just on the note of ashwagandha, I know you make different forms. You make this spagyric ashwagandha. And can you talk about what makes that formula so unique, the extraction process, that maybe none of us will get if we go buy, a 500 milligram capsule of an herb of ashwagandha? But what the difference is in your tinctures that you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so there's all sorts of different ways of extracting and working with herbs, from raw herbs to various powdered extracts, capsules, teas, and then tinctures. Tinctures are one of my favorite just because of the convenience of going around and just take a squirt, put it in your mouth, and you can move on. So what we offer at Lost Empire Herbs is a ashwagandha spagyric tincture. So ashwagandha is one of the most popular herbs out of Ayurvedic medicine, out of India. And most of it is grown over there. You do need to watch out for heavy metals and different things with people. That's a big problem in China and some of the areas over there, but can be an issue in just about anywhere. truth be told. So our ashwagandha is a little bit different in that it is grown outside of Portland, Oregon, on the outskirts of the town. There's small farmers there that work with it. And then this is extracted in alcohol. Alcohol is one of the best solvents for pulling the medicinal goodies out of all sorts of different herbs. And then it also allows for sublingual absorption. So you can squirt it in your mouth under your tongue, and it is going to absorb directly into the bloodstream, just tiny particles, and then be able to have an effect without having to really go through digestion. Something that can be an issue for people with capsules and powders and whatnot is those tend to cause a little bit more digestive upset. I mean, most people can handle them, but that is a complaint that is out there. So the average tincture, you just take the roots, in this case with ashwagandha, you'd soak them in alcohol for about a month, then they'd be pressed off, and there you would have your tincture. With a spagyric tincture, and spagyric means herbal alchemy. So most people have heard of alchemy as, turning lead into gold. But the truth is there's a whole laboratory science behind it, and a lot of ways of working with the plant material that actually look to nature and really work in alignment with processes that happen in nature. So with a spagyric tincture, after pressing off the roots, those would then be burned down, calcined in alchemical words, ground up and burned several times until it becomes this fine white ash powder. This is then dissolved in water, so you're separating off the insoluble and soluble minerals, then poured off and crystallized down. You're actually forming crystals from what remains, and these crystals get added back into the tincture. In alchemical terms, this is the salt that gets added back into the sulfur and mercury, not to be confused with the chemicals of those names, but it's putting the body back in so that with a spagyric tincture, it is embodied. It is better able to communicate with your body and be able to go in and do things with a little bit more potency. So this is the thing that we do with many of our tinctures, not all of them, unfortunately, at this time. But it is quite a more intensive process. So
Yeah.
There's a reason not everyone does it, the lack of knowledge. And then also you have to burn, there's smoke, there's all kinds of things that go involved in this. So this is something that we do with our ashwagandha tincture as well as other herbs.
Wow. Yeah. I did not know that. Wow, that is so cool. Talk to me about just your understanding of performance herbalism and how has it helped you achieve some of those extraordinary levels in sports and some of those feats that you've accomplished. I know you mentioned cordyceps being a great one for VO2 max and oxygen, but what?
Yeah. I mean, the way I like to look at performance is through different lenses or perspectives. So I like to look at kind of 5 different things. There's the physical, the energetic, the mental, emotional, and the spiritual. And of course, there are different methods and methodologies. Now, if people are talking about performing in the gym or a sport, they tend to just think about the physical, maybe a little bit about the mental, but there's really not a full way of looking in. If we go into the physical, there's a whole bunch of different ways we can look at this, mobility, flexibility, strength, all these different details. So we can be supporting our body biochemically through the use of herbs and other supplements. However, with herbs and something like a spagyric tincture, there's definitely an energetic thing going on as well. Then can we also stack on, are we doing like visualization in certain ways that can improve performance? Are we looking at our state and having the right kind of mood enter into these things? So I like to stack as much as I possibly can towards whatever I'm aiming for. And this is what has allowed me to do the kind of feats that I have done. It's again, not just by doing, it's not just the physical training of the sets and reps. If you're just going in about it that way, it's such a limited approach. So for example, I'll go after this interview, I'll be training and I'll take herbs. We have a formula called Hercules, which is our pre-workout formula. It has the ant you mentioned in there, a great one for energy, as well as stacked with some of the other herbs. And with this herbal formula, I just have more work capacity in my workout. Like I can go longer, I can just do more. It's really great for that. It can even help with the mental focus. We've had Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu athletes that love this stuff and various other herbs. So this is one thing that I'm doing in my workout. And then between sets, I'll be doing things like visualization, or how can I do those small mental tweaks that can allow me to do one more rep, for instance. So
Mm.
this is the way that I approach performance.
Yeah, dude, I love that. I love that. Do you are you, I know you've written several books, but is this in like the books, the part of your like the training modality, stacking the herbs with the mind, with the mental, that the mindset,
Yep.
and then the physical and the energetics is so good.
Yeah, I've definitely covered these subjects in many ways. A good book for the mental training specifically is Mental Muscle. That's a great one that I published with Dragon Door, and that really covers like the foundation, because a lot of people have learned to visualize, but one of the big things that I recognized in studying neuro-linguistic programming is what they call submodalities in there. It's the details of how you visualize that really impact people in a big way. So a little tip or trick I'd like to give your listeners here, and you can try this as well, is the next time you're in the gym doing some sort of exercise, go ahead and visualize yourself doing that exercise, but brighten up the movie as if someone's turning up the lights, or it's going from like standard definition to high definition. And what this seems to do, my explanation of it, is this is amping up the like nervous system energy. And this allows you to kind of heighten that mood. You'll probably feel good just in visualizing it. Go and do the exercise, and you'll likely see that you can do more than you previously were able to do. So that's like a quick hack for the visualization that can aid in performance.
Dude, I love that. That is so good. I've never heard anybody, and I'm a big meditator, visualizer, manifester, all those things. I've never heard anybody say that. I love that. I'm going to start implementing that. Thank you.
And there's far deeper you can go. You can have a fun process where you hack into your mind codes of how you look at a hard exercise versus an easy exercise and map things across. So it can go much further than that, but that's a one that tends to work for most people just because of the kind of commonality of that submodality in working with people.
Yeah, I love that. I'm going to go pick up that book. That's awesome. That is so good. Talk about hormonal health. And, what do you think is probably just one of the most misunderstood aspects of hormonal health and how it relates to herbs too?
Yeah, it's a great question. I would say that testosterone falls with age. There's some truth to it, but it's definitely not the whole truth. And for women as well, testosterone is super important for women. While they have like 1/10 as much as guys do, it's very important, and they actually have like more testosterone coursing through their bodies than they do estrogen. People don't realize these things. It is starting to become a more popular thing for doctors to be looking at testosterone for women and doing testosterone replacement therapy. So it's good that that's getting out there. Of course, there are more natural ways to approach it as well. But yeah, recognizing that hormones don't necessarily need to fall with age. You may need to do some more things to support them, but the biggest thing that's going on right now is the pervasive endocrine disrupting chemicals in our environment. So this is xenoestrogens such as bisphenol A, BPA in plastics, and even BPA-free things. You have to be wary because they may have just replaced them with BPS or BPF, which can have the same effects. Pesticides, herbicides, stuff that's in our tap water, heavy metals can be disruptive of this. And this stuff is honestly in the very air that we breathe. We can do a lot as far as reducing our exposure. So for instance, I'm drinking my water here that's in glass rather than plastic. So making these efforts towards helping our hormones, because these things go in and they are just causing havoc. Some are mimicking estrogen. Phthalates, for example, which are all kinds of things, are anti-androgenic, and this stuff is everywhere. So we are on this constant burden, which builds it's not going to poison you where you're going to feel sick today, but it's building slowly and slowly over time to the point where it is causing damage over time, especially as you age. A friend of mine, Peter Ragnar, he would say that time is not toxic. So it's not necessarily the time that is causing your hormones to go down, but the chronic stressors that are building up, including this toxicity. So this is one thing. And again, elimination as much as you can, avoiding these things is going to be a huge step in that, but also recognizing that herbs can help in this way. One of the things that has become more clear to me at just looking at a bunch of science is that herbs essentially build this internal herbal arbor against the toxicity of the world. In a lot of animal research, what they'll do is they'll cause some sort of disease model or some sort of damage by using a specific toxin. For instance, they induce Alzheimer's by using aluminum. right? They cause liver damage with carbon tetrachloride. I'm forgetting the exact name of the chemical, but there's countless examples of this. And one of the
I thought you were going to talk about the most recent safe and effective. I won't say the word because I might get shadow banned here, but I thought you were going to say that. Oh, but yeah. Go on.
BPA, I was just talking about, they use this to induce sperm damage and hormonal decline in rats. And in a lot of this research, what they're looking at is, can these herbs help to protect from this damage? So Sustanche, that was one that reduced BPA toxicity. So since BPA, even if we're reducing all the plastic, like if you're touching a receipt that you get at the store, a lot of those are coated in BPA. It can honestly be aerolized. It's in the air that we breathe, as well as all kinds of other pollutants. So again, you can minimize a whole bunch, but you have these herbs that are working to shield yourself from this damage. This is why I feel that the herbs are really important. Of course, some other nutrients will do this as well. We want our vitamins and minerals and amino acids, all that sort of stuff. But especially in this day and age, it's not like we actually need this stuff more than we ever have before because of what we're facing.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I had no idea about that. I'm laughing because I was at Costco the other day and I was busy and they gave you the receipt. You got to walk out and show the guy. So I handed it to my 10-year-old. I go, here, hold this really quick. And he wouldn't do it. I go, dude, what are you doing, man? Like, help your dad out. And he goes, you told me those are toxic. I'm not holding that. I couldn't be mad at him, Logan. I couldn't be mad. I said, yeah, you're right.
Smart kid.
Yeah, that's my boy.
Good. I touch those with very delicate fingers when I need to, or just tell him to trash them right away.
Yeah. We're talking about hormonal health. Let's talk sexual health, because that was one big thing I saw with herbs and maybe I'm saying, you just said it, Sustanche. There's a Tonkat Ali. There's several. I'm sure there's a lot of guys that are listening and women, but what have you seen just anecdotally or even in the research that seems to be the most effective? And I know you have a lot of these at Empire Herbs.
Yeah. So it's a very fascinating subject. And of course it's complex, right? We're dealing with biology. There is no one cause of, let's say, erectile dysfunction. But testosterone can certainly be important. If your testosterone's in the toilet, things won't be working there as well. And although I said erectile dysfunction, this applies to the women as well. Women actually have more erectile tissue than men do. It's just not as obvious, but it is there. And so it's very important for women as well. So we have blood flow, which is important in a bunch of different ways, getting to the area, but nitric oxide is a big component of that. The mechanism by which a lot of the pharmaceutical drugs that treat ED works is something called a PDE5 inhibitor. This is an enzyme that basically breaks down the nitric oxide, and therefore, like, blood flow will go away. There are some herbs that have a compound that actually performs like this. Icariin and horny goat weed is one. The Tonkat Ali that you mentioned, really good. Like, it's mostly well known for testosterone, for supporting total and free testosterone, but it also has some PDE5 inhibiting effects. There's the whole dopamine pathway that is important in libido and desire. And this is something that a lot of people are facing today with porn-induced erectile dysfunction. This can just screw up your circuits to where it won't function the same as it used to, just based on the supernormal stimuli. So again, you have to look at a wide variety of things. Herbs can help in certain instances, but not necessarily in all of them. So I actually had porn-induced erectile dysfunction in my 20s. Took me years to figure out what was going on, and then breaking the addiction. So I'd use herbs, and like sometimes it would work, but sometimes not, just depending on what else was going on there. So that's something I like to make people aware of, that can be very problematic. There's also just the blood vessel damage, the nerve damage that can be involved in this. Can be from diabetes, but even pre-diabetes, there can be damage happening because it's very fine vessels in there. So there's a whole host of things to be looked at in that way. And then herbs can be one thing that can certainly help in many cases, but they won't necessarily help in all of them.
Okay. Yeah, good to know. What about mental health and herbs? I know that Bacopa is one that you guys have talked about a lot. Are there any herbs that you like for just cognitive health, mental health, focus, anything like that? ADHD, I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. Bacopa that you mentioned, that's one of my favorites. So this herb's coming out of Ayurveda. I like to call it the #1 herbal nootropic. So nootropic, this is a term that was coined basically to say those substances that would be like non-damaging, kind of like adaptogens, but specifically focusing on cognitive health in different ways. So most of the field is looking at isolated nutrients like B vitamins are often used, but then drugs are also looked at, modafinil, of course, different things out there. But a lot of the herbs can help as well. And Bacopa is one that is often used in this. When I take our Bacopa powder, I can literally feel focus coming on right away. I also get that effect with Schizandra, the Schizandra berries. It's like it just pulls that focus into some clarity right there, and you can have it. Of course, most of the research says you're going to get the best results when taking it over time. So those are some of my favorite herbs for that. Then lion's mane mushroom. This is one that's become extremely popular in the recent years because of how it supports nerve growth factor, brain-derived neurotropic factor, really helping to actually like regrow neurons and be able to support them in a variety of different ways, protecting the neurons as well. That's a whole big thing, as I was mentioning with the Alzheimer's inducing or aluminum inducing that, and how some of these mushrooms could help to mitigate some of that damage. So as far as cognitive health, those are some great ones there. Then also mood can be supported in a variety of ways. One of my favorites is blue vervain. This is great for nervous system stress relief. Literally, it's called a 𝘵𝘪𝘵𝘵𝘦𝘍, so it tastes really bitter. I have some, I think, right here. It hits your tongue, and I can immediately feel my nervous system relax a little bit. It has that instant of an effect, because that bitter taste, it just has a cool downward draining action and just like releases stress off the nerves.
Ooh.
I carry a lot of tension up in my shoulder here, and it's interesting because I can feel the difference between this. It's not a muscle relaxant, but the nerves let go and then the muscles relax. This is different than something like kava, which is a muscle relaxant. It's a great herb as well, but just different effects of these herbs in different ways.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. I love that. What about dosage? You know, you're mentioning lion's mane, and I know there's a lot of companies out there that will sell teas and things, but from what I can tell from the research, you need like 1.5 grams, I think, or milligrams in order to like actually do anything. And a lot of these companies, they're giving you 500 milligrams. So, you know, you don't know, you're not getting the effects. What have you guys done to do you like recommend dosages? Because some of your things are in powders, or even if they're in the tinctures, have you seen that even like in the tinctures, because it's so concentrated, like one dropper full is typically a pretty good amount?
Yeah, so we have recommended dosages for everything because we got to put something on there. But the truth is, these are just starting points.
Yeah.
In many cases, there isn't any science available to really say how much should be done. And even if that is the case, different types of extracts are going to be different. So how does a powder compare to a tincture? The research on this sort of stuff is mostly not there, honestly.
Yeah.
So it's a starting place, and we recommend you play with it to find what works for you. Very often, more can be better. Like if you're not feeling any sort of effects from something, double the dose, triple the dose, see what happens. Obviously, with a bigger dose, there's also a bit more chance of side effects, whether that's something like just that stomach upset or whatever else may happen. But that more is not necessarily always better. Sometimes just a single drop of a tincture can be like enough to get an effect, especially if it's a more energetic one out there. So this matters on the person too. One person's going to need to take a mega dose of the pine pollen and really get the benefits from doing that, whereas the other person's going to take half a teaspoon, and that's good for what they're going for. So although we would like to give like very strict dosages and say this is all science-backed, honestly, it's just not there. It is a starting place. And if you look at herbs more as foods than really like medicine, then you can see it like you're safe to play with the dose and find what works for you. So we highly recommend people adapt and adjust the dose to see what works for them.
Yeah, it makes sense too. I mean, you think about it just in Ayurveda, there's so many different phenotypes, right? You have the Vata, the Kapha, the Pitta. So everyone's going to their phenotypes. I might need double the dosage, where someone like my wife needs half. You just don't know. You got to play with it. So that makes total sense.
Yeah. So find the herbs that work for you, then find the dosages that work for you. Find the extract types. We sell in many cases like a powdered or capsulized version of something, but also a tincture. And some people say like the powder is way better. Some people, the tincture is way better. Some people take them both and get a synergistic benefit from doing that. There's I could tell you to do something, but I'd be lying saying like, you're going to have to try it. You're going to have to see what works for you.
Yeah. Well,
and I'll mention one other thing. One thing that unfortunately does happen in the supplement industry is fairy dusting. So you'll see this a lot in formulas that have like a laundry list of something, and it's like, oh, we want to market that this has this in there, but there's really like such a small amount that it's really not going to do much. What we focus on instead is, while we do have some formulas, we have a lot of single herbs, so people can really play with and find those herbs that work for them best.
Yeah, and that's what I like about your company, because that's what I mean. There's so much fairy dusting. To your point, yes, you have cordyceps. Yes, you have a reishi. Yes, you have, but it's all sparse doses. I'd have to take 20 pills to get an effective dose. So with yours, you literally get a nice big bag of powder. I mean, you can titrate your own, you can kind of mix and figure out what's going to work best for you. And like, even with the black ant powder, I remember like using that as a pre-workout. I felt it. You could feel it right away, which that was helpful. Like, I'm like, okay, like that's what I want. I want to actually feel it,
Yeah, that's what we want to deliver, because, most people are taking supplements on faith. It's like, oh, I heard this is good. There's some scientific research. I'm going to take it, and I have no clue if it's doing anything. Like, this is the average person's experience with supplements. So we try to focus a bit more, again, those superior herbs and strong extracts that are going to deliver benefits that in many cases are feelable. Some people, some of the herbs, it really depends on the herbs and the person, may be able to feel something right away, like that stress relieving effect of blue vervain, or, the enhanced energy with ant or cordyceps. But other ones, it's going to take longer. If you take, reishi mushroom, you may notice some like calming, relaxing. If they meditate, they're more in touch with themselves. They're going to be able to notice the subtle effects of these. But it may be, after you've taken it for a month, that you're noticing a little bit better energy, that your immune system's operating a bit better, stuff like that. So it depends in this regard as well.
Yeah, really cool. I know we've been talking for a while. I want to start wrapping things up, but talk to me about any exciting projects that you're working on that you can share with us.
Yeah. So at Lost Empire Herbs, we got our first capsule machine. So we've worked with some vendors here, but we do want people to taste the stuff. So we're not getting rid of the powders or the tinctures, but we want to meet people with where they're at. So we're going to have capsule versions of a lot more, because we're just in a capsule society right now.
Yeah.
And there's reasons to take it for the convenience. And, even to me, some of the herbs are a little less than palatable. I do take some capsules of the herbs sometimes. So that's a fun and exciting project. And this is something that we wanted to do for years, is pine pollen. We've only talked a little bit about this. This is one of the best hormone herbs out there, because it's rich in phytoandrogens. So it's going in and helping to support the androgen, the testosterone system. This has next to no science on it. Like, there's barely even animal research, but we're funding the first pine pollen study trial in humans. And this is something we want to do for a long time, and finally had the cash sitting around to do this, because science is very expensive. And it's just a small pilot trial, but to get something out there and contribute to the scientific literature, that's quite exciting as well.
Yeah, that's huge. We were talking about pine pollen before we jumped on, and Tim Ferriss mentioned it in his book, The 4-Hour Chef, many years ago. And that was the first time I heard of it. He's like, if you want to raise your testosterone and you want to feel more virile as a man, take pine pollen and eat a big steak. I was like, done. I'm going to go try this. And that's how I got into pine pollen, back then. But I didn't realize that there wasn't that much research. I thought there actually was. So that's cool that you're pioneering this.
Yep.
Yeah, very cool, man. Well, I'd love to have you on for a round two. We'll have to bring you back. I'm sure there's so much more we could talk about. But for right now, tell us where everybody can find you if they want to connect with you on either social media, and where do you live most? Is it Instagram? Is it LinkedIn? And then also, where can people go if they're interested in getting some of the herbs and trying it?
Yeah, absolutely. So the herb website is lostempireherbs.com. And it's a wealth of resources. You mentioned we have a good quiz there. So you click the button and it's like, what are you looking for most? Is it athletics? Is it sex? Is it energy? Is it weight loss? And it will funnel you to different herbs that you might try out for those functions, but tons of other information there. So that's at lostempireherbs.com. If you're interested more on the fitness and the mental training side of things, my other website is legendarystrength.com. You can check that out. As far as social media, I'm just getting back in the game of that. I kind of took a 3-year break just about, but I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. Instagram at Strongman Logan is a good place to find me there.
Amazing. Logan Christopher from Lost Empire Herbs. Appreciate you, brother. Thanks for being on the show.
Yeah, thank you very much, Joel. It was a great time.